Hi, I'm Sam.
And I'm Max.
And this is Movie Nostalgia, where we give you an honest review of the movies we've meddled with so mischievously over at Maybe Movies.
And on this episode, we are looking at Zulu.
Zulu, baby.
This is the 1964 Paramount Pictures Cy Enfield-directed historical biopic, I suppose you'd call it.
Yeah, I'd go with that.
Produced and directed by Stanley Baker, produced and starring Stanley Baker, directed by Cy Enfield. Also starring Jack Hawkins, Ulla Jacobson, James Booth, Nigel Green, and introducing a certain Michael Caine.
My name is Michael Payne. I'm a nosy neighbour.
Ooh, missus.
Mm-hmm. And also featuring, for those of you here in the UK who were growing up in the 80s who might remember Glyn Edwards, who played the landlord at the Winchester Club in Minder.
Pleased to meet you, gents. What's it going to be?
A little fact for you to take away with you this evening.
Yes. So this epitomises the expression a perennial classic.
Oh, yes.
This was a kind of a pet project by Stanley Baker, because obviously being Welsh and the 24th foot...
Oh, that explains so much focus on the Welshman. I didn't realise that.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand now.
Because this was the first production by his production company, Diamond Pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And what a one to do. I mean, it's... again, as I said, anybody of a certain age will remember this almost every Christmas.
Bank holidays. I remember it was either bank holidays or Sundays. It was a day when no one was going anywhere.
Yep.
Because it was such a long movie. When you added commercials to this movie in the 80s, it ran to about 3 hours and 10 minutes. It was a big movie. It was like Spartacus.
Yes, absolutely. On those days when it's a bank holiday, so it's in England, it's going to be raining. You're going to be sat in front of the TV, what you're going to watch. And for those of you who don't know, again, just to... I suppose, as we normally do. Where were you? Well, I think we've just covered that, haven't we, really?
Well, this is one of those ones that's so perennial, I'm not 100% certain where I was the first time I saw it. I want to say it was a Sunday, because I'm reasonably sure I was at my nanny's house, and we went to my nanny and granddad's every Sunday for Sunday roast. So I'm pretty sure it was a Sunday.
So while the adults are talking after lunch, you're in the other room.
No, this is before lunch. It was like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon sort of thing.
Yeah, again, it would have been one of those occasions for me, again, when I was a kid, and you saw it so many times. And then, unfortunately, they started taking it off because they considered it was no longer appropriate to show it.
Oh, culturally appropriate.
Yes, yeah.
Oh dear, well that's a shame.
It is a shame because there's so much respect is paid to both sides. Both in the film and obviously behind the camera and things like that.
It's very obvious that there was a lot of attention to detail on the part of the director and the production crew to make sure that they were giving a genuine depiction of both sides of that particular situation. Yeah. I feel like this has succeeded.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. So for those of you who don't know what Zulu is about, so this is the story of the nursing station at Rorke's Drift at the time was the Natal Territory, which is now Natal Province in South Africa, where the Zulus rose up and tried to fight back against the English and the Boers, as they were on and off doing at the time in the late Victorian period. The incident itself happened in January 1879, and shortly before this, about a day or so before this, the third column were attacked by an army of Zulus and wiped out. There was over 1,500 men, and the next stop on their march was Rorke's Drift, where there were stationed approximately 150 men of Harlech.
Stop your dreaming.
Indeed.
With quite a few of them were in the hospital station there, and they held off over a day and a half against an army of 4,000 Zulus.
It's quite impressive. I'll admit, when I was a kid, I didn't understand that movies could be about real things, and I thought this was a fictional story. It seemed so over the top.
Get in here!
And so heroic. It seemed like it must be fictional. And it wasn't until I was entering my teens that I realised this was actual historical fact and these people had done these things, which really reinvigorated the idea of the movie for me. When I was younger, it was a long movie that was a bit talky, and I didn't care for it as much as I'd like to.
Yes, because
At least as much as my family would like me to.
Yeah, because a lot of the action is sort of later into the film.
Yeah, absolutely. But once I realised this was historical fact, it reoriented itself for me and became like, oh no, this was a significant moment in British and colonial history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, when I was having a look at some of the extra features and things like that, the only one that I think they had a few letters from was the family of Henry Hook, because apparently the depiction of him in the film is very dramatised. He wasn't like that at all. Apparently he went on from this to become a colour master sergeant himself. But
I can sort of see what you're saying, but at the same time, there's that whole...
Take his rifle hook and get to it! I'll make a soldier of you yet.
And he does.
He does. This is true.
So it could be the prologue to that story.
It could be, but so what they found from the family was saying that he wasn't like that in real life. But
that's fair enough then. If he wasn't, he wasn't.
No. But yeah, so it's a number of firsts. As I said, it was the first for Stanley Baker's own production company. As I mentioned at the start there as well, it does say at the start introducing Michael Caine. And curiously enough, they only did 2 screen tests, and it actually wasn't for the part of Bromhead. It was actually for the part of Henry Hook.
Oh, you're joking.
No.
He auditioned for Hook?
2 people auditioned for... Or they only screen tested 2 people for Henry Hook, Michael Caine and Terence Stamp.
Who is this imbecile?
And they were really close friends and were sharing an apartment at the time. And Michael Caine's screen test was the worst of the 2. Terence Stamp's was apparently professional, on point, but this is like stuff that was recounted by Stanley Baker's widow in the special features.
Of course.
She's saying that actors know actors. You just looked at Michael Caine and said, no, that guy's going to be a star. I want him. And he had to fight with the studio, with Paramount, through the entire production because they kept wanting him to fire him, even while they were shooting.
Oh, that I did not know. That's amazing. Yeah. Well, good for him. And thank goodness for that, because otherwise we wouldn't have had so many amazing performances from the man.
Now, what would you like?
Everything.
What happened with that as well was the director, because Enfield was an American, he didn't get the kind of class structure and the trope types for acting here in the UK. So even though Michael Caine turns up with his broad Cockney accent, but he just said he looks like a toff, essentially. And that's why he got the part of Broomhead, because the original actor, I don't know, can't remember his name, turned it down. So the director said, no, we'll make him Broomhead, we'll get somebody else in to play Hook. Which is, I'm surprised they didn't go back to Terence Stamp, but they didn't. They got the guy who ended up playing him was a friend of Stanley Baker's, because they were trying to keep costs down because it was a low-budget film.
It's absurd how artistic history happens, isn't it, folks? It really is.
Yeah, so it was like about £665,000, which at the time would have been about 1.7 million to make the film.
Wow, that's still pretty modest.
And it took 8 million. It was outselling one of the Beatle films. It was outselling one of the Bond films.
So that's like about 500 or 600 million now.
I don't know. I'd have to.
Wow.
I'm sure somebody will.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's talk about success.
Exactly.
Manifest success.
Yeah. It's really interesting, as I said, if you do get a copy, do get one with special features, because there's loads of stuff. They had loads of problems when they were shooting in South Africa, because you're talking about mid-60s, you're talking about the height of apartheid.
What are you doing? Oh, just checking to see if I was standing on plastic.
Oh,
God.
I didn't even think about that. No.
Yeah, they weren't allowed. They had secret police on set. They weren't allowed to fraternise with the Zulus when they weren't working. They weren't allowed to pay the Zulus, certainly not at the same rate they were paying the English actors.
Obviously, I'm not a child of apartheid. I never had anything to do with the cultures I live in. Had nothing to do with apartheid. But, oh my God, really?
This is showing you again the measure of the man that Stanley Baker was. What they did, in the end, is and I'm assuming they're the ones that appear in the film, they bought 300 head of cattle and gave those to the Zulu. And
so they found a way to pay them?
Yeah. And also, once they'd finished filming...
Oh, that's brilliant.
They did manage to swing that the set that they built as Rorke's Drift, they gave that to the Zulus, and the buildings were turned into hospitals and schools and stuff.
Well, things you didn't know, folks. Things you didn't know. That's amazing.
Which makes it, even when you learn that, and you find out that there was a period where they wouldn't show this on terrestrial TV, because, again, it's not appropriate to do so. Well, no, the only person who's being bigoted here is you for not showing it.
Well, yes.
For not doing justice to the film.
It's a film about a historical moment in time. That is a fact. And the existence and lives of these people are a fact. And anything that can be done to improve those lives is good.
Yes.
I don't understand any other argument. It baffles me. Baffles me.
Same. Sorry, we did forget one person.
Who's that?
Who was never young. I don't think he was ever young. Patrick McGee.
This is going to hurt you a lot more than it will me, I'm happy to say.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, we've mentioned the dude a few times, everywhere from the early 80s right back to, what was this, 1964?
This was 64, obviously things like
And he looked the same. He's like Steve Martin.
Yeah.
You know?
I think the only one that you really see the difference is probably in Hawk the Slayer, where he has receded quite a bit.
Be still, ugly one.
He has receded, yes.
But he doesn't look that much difference in this to what he does about 10, 12 years later in Clockwork Orange.
Food, all right.
Yeah, no, that dude was never young.
And again,
there are a few actors who are like that. They're just never young.
Yeah. Or never seem to age, isn't it? Paul Rudd's like that, isn't he? He still looks the same now.
No, you see, the never seeming to age thing is like, they're like polar opposites. There's the people who don't age, and there's the people who are never young.
This is true.
Donald Pleasance.
Yes.
He was never young.
No.
He was always balding, getting on a little, even when he was 29.
Yeah, even when you see him in something like The Great Escape.
Yeah.
Again, that was probably similar sort of time.
That's the 60s. Yeah. 67, 69, I'm not sure. But, yeah.
What would we do with that? What would we do with The Great Escape?
That's
a discussion for another time.
And
for another show as well.
Let's not get
but this was
hung
a good
up on this.
No, this was a brilliant one to do on Maybe Movies. It was. I really enjoyed it. I think I had lots of fun with it.
It's one of those movies that I mostly watched when I was younger. I remember as something that I was nostalgic about. Watching it again so many years later and having the opportunity to watch a few videos and things that would explain some of the historical details really made me realise this is an important point in time, and even though it seems over the top in certain places, it's more than accurate. And there's always time for learning about history, the real facts.
Absolutely. If you haven't seen this film, then do show it to it. Yes, it's a film about war, so there is death and there is blood and those kind of things. But again, it's one of those films. Well, I mean, look, it still has a PG rating now. And I mean, we were watching it when we were 6 or 7, so
yes.
Do not be afraid to show this to the family. I think your kids will love it. It's one of those ones that does crop up every now and again. They reference it and stuff. The one that I always think about is the reference they make to it in Dog Soldiers. Spoon goes on about it.
You know what this reminds me of? Rorke's Drift. 100 men of Harlech making a desperate stand against 10,000 Zulu warriors.
I missed that every single time.
Really?
I did. I didn't realise. I didn't make the connection.
Which is hilarious because he's such a quintessential Englishman, and I said most of this regiment were Welsh, but he can still take inspiration from it. Again, that's the thing. Not everything has to be like you to have merit. Sorry. Moving on from that point, I don't know about you. This one for me is it gets all of the thumbs. Yep. It works. It's well paced, brilliantly acted. I know they did say that apparently some of the Zulus, because they didn't understand what was going on. They didn't understand filmmaking.
Oh, right.
So what they had to do was they got a load of silent films, so like some Buster Keaton, Harold Lloyd, and they found a big enough rock that they could paint white to use as a screen, and they projected them on there. And then once they got used to it, they had to restrain them, because some of them, like with their deaths and things like that, were overacting.
Oh my goodness.
They just got so into it. But yes, it's for me, it's a two-thumb movie, I'm assuming.
It's a great movie. It's an absolute classic. Especially for millennials and Generation Z. You need to see some of the things that happened in the past. You might not appreciate them, but you need to know they happened.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a great example of showing you one of the things that happened.
Absolutely.
So it's worth your time at least once, just the once, to see for yourself.
And on that note,
Uh-huh.
which one do you want? It's either going to be, if it bleeds, we can kill it, or we need to get to the chopper.
Get to the chopper!
We'll see you next time.
God, that was terrible.